Hey guys, our topic this week is a request from Dustin Archer, Javier Zaragoza, Jazzy Blagojevic, and David Fitzgerald. We'll be going over the Grand Abominations from the Darksiders series.
Okay, so, the Grand Abominations collectively are a central plot device for the Darksiders Abomination Vault novel. They're not just MacGuffins, though, since a handful of them make actual appearances in the book and, do something, rather than just being the thing that the main characters, death and war in this case, pursue. So, what are they? The short answer is the Grand Abominations are weapons, incredibly powerful weapons crafted by the Nephilim, shortly before beginning their campaign of carnage and conquest across reality. For the long answer, the one we know you're all here for, we first have to discuss a race known as the tm&m. Before we go any further, please note that this video will contain massive spoilers for the Darksiders Abomination Vault novel. It's a fun read. If you are considering picking it up, put us on pause and come back later. We'll still be here.
The tm&m were a race of old ones. Specifically, it's noted that they were very old even by those standards, hailing from a time when the very fabric of reality itself was different, a not uncommon fantasy trope. In this particular case, creation was less solid, less rigid in its rules of how reality worked. The tm&m then, creatures born during this old and more freely flowing era, blurred the lines between craftsman and craft. They had the ability to sculpt whatever they wanted, tools, weapons, even art, from their own flesh, blood, and bone. The process could take months or even years, but with proper training, any tm&m could turn any part of themselves, connected or not, into just about anything they wanted. They were said to form sculptures from severed strips of their own skin, turn a hand or an arm into a blade of sinew and bone, while still connected to their own living bodies, etc., etc., etc. They were also inventive and possessed a power and drive to craft, make, mold, and form. In this way, they were very similar to makers, save they presumably always wove a literal bit of themselves into their craft. Due to this creativity and drive, they were the first in creation to do several things. In a time when the makers were remaking the land around them to suit their needs, the tm&m sculpted and created their entire world, shaping it to better suit them. They were the first beings in all of creation to form a true civilization. Before the makers had made the Forge Lands into what we know, before the makers had laid the foundations for hell and heaven, before the angels and demons were more than scattered tribes eking out a living on the land, the tm&m had forged a world, a culture, and a society real enough to have an identity of self.
Now, something that makes that interesting, beyond the general concept, of course, is that despite all of this, whether because other races learned from the tm&m and got a head start, or because the tm&m's fascination with the art of the craft somehow slowed their progress in other areas, despite arriving at such milestones literal eons before everyone else, the other major players in creation soon outstripped them, so that by the time the Nephilim had come into being, millennia after the tm&m's birth, the tm&m were, in comparison to the angels and the demons from which the Nephilim had been formed, fairly primitive. It was for all these reasons that the Nephilim chose to sack the tm&m's homeworld first. Those familiar with Darksiders lore will have heard the general tales of the Nephilim's great crusade across creation, supposedly in search of a home. And from those tales, and what we witness from the Four Horsemen and Absalom, all that remain of the Nephilim race, it's easy to draw the conclusion that the Nephilim were so mighty that they simply swatted aside whatever came their way with little need for planning or foresight. But the Abomination Vault novel reveals that a large part of their success was due to the Nephilim's intelligence and cunning. When the decision was made to rampage across reality, conquering worlds and the like, the Nephilim realized that not only would they earn enemies, but that at some point in their war they may come across foes that could match or exceed the Nephilim's own power. They knew they'd need an edge, something to tip the scales in their favor in any conflict, especially against truly powerful foes, and they saw in the tm&m the ace in the hole that they needed to ensure their people's victory.
A contingent of the eldest of the Nephilim, the firstborn generation, given the idea by the horseman Death himself, though this was eons before he became one of the Council's enforcers, stayed on the tm&m homeworld after the tm&m were slaughtered in order to use the tm&m's natural gifts to the Nephilim's advantage and form weapons, the Grand Abominations. Using the tm&m's remains, the skin, the bones, the blood, the organs, eyes, teeth, and everything in between, the Nephilim somehow harnessed not only the strength and malleability of the tm&m, but also the dead race's future potential, and funneled all of that into creating weapons of mass destruction. The details of how aren't given, save that the inclusion of the Raviem's bodies, and thus the essence of the Raviem as a people, along with their natural flesh-crafting abilities, made the creation of these weapons not only easier, but possible in the first place. Since the Nephilim, after all, were not makers, they didn't have the crafting skills to forge weapons that could function on this order of magnitude on their own. If they'd possessed such skills, there would have been no need for the Raviem in the first place. Regardless, through means said and inferred to be truly horrific, torturous, and frankly downright evil, the bodies, souls, and future potential for an entire race of gifted, fluid, powerful craftsmen were converted into several dozen WMDs. Weapons so powerful that even the Nephilim, their creators, were careful with them.
The Grand Abominations aren't just organic. They are very much alive. They don't appear to be sapient, but they do have a degree of consciousness, will, and awareness. They're alive and thinking on at least a basic, primal, animal, or microscopic organism level. As explained in the novel, they don't think and reason, but they feel, and perhaps because of whatever methods used to harness the Ravaem's potential, the Grand Abominations are all connected on a spiritual, empathic, and/or psychic level. A great part of their power comes from a deep hatred, rage, and bitterness possessed and shared by all Grand Abominations. They are alive and aware enough to know what was done to them, that not only were they slaughtered, but that their half-dead bodies were tortured and mutilated into weapons to serve their destroyers. Death claims that the Abominations hate on a level that even the darkest and most evil of demons could not comprehend. Their hatred was so great that it could be felt, presumably by anyone, as we know angels can feel them, though they were definitely more easily felt by the Nephilim, telling them when an abomination was nearby. An important but worrying note about these things is that they are, in many respects, living organisms. Now, we've already mentioned that, but the two important things to note from that are, 1, they can die. We find a half-dead one in the book, which we'll go over in a bit. But also that, 2, the indications are that the Grand Abominations can also grow and evolve. Since near the climax of the book, one of the Abominations, empowered by the proximity of the others and their hive mind-like presence, puppeteers its wielder's body, acting on its own accord. Something Death was certain it had never been designed to be able to do, indicating that in the centuries since they were last used, the Grand Abominations had grown in influence, if not the power of their designed function.
In order to ensure that the Grand Abominations couldn't be used against them should any of the weapons be lost or stolen, sometime either in the process of the Grand Abominations' creation or shortly thereafter, the Nephilim came up with 3 safeguards for their ultimate weapons. The first and most basic was simple secrecy. The nature of the Grand Abominations, their power, and even their existence was not shared with any outside of the firstborn ranks of the Nephilim. Though it is admitted by the younger horsemen, War, Fury, and Strife that they suspected or knew of the existence of some powerful weapons or capabilities held by their eldest brethren, they didn't know. And it is made plain that most of the Nephilim didn't know of the Grand Abomination's existence at all. Indeed, most didn't even know that their creation was why the Nephilim rode on the Raviem's world before any others. The second failsafe was the titular Abomination Vault, a pocket dimension with a single entrance known only to the firstborn Nephilim, where most of the Grand Abominations were stored at any given time, and which supposedly only the Nephilim could enter. Though by all accounts it was actually just heavily warded, not, say, DNA coded for Nephilim only or something. As the centuries passed and the Nephilim pressed onward, the vault's entrance was moved from world to world, but always kept secret. Third, last, and most importantly, every Grand Abomination was designed so that its full power could only be accessed if it was fed the blood of the Raviem. So yes, presumably the Nephilim trekked around with stores of Raviem blood so they could use their toys. Without blood, the Grand Abominations would, depending upon the particular abomination in question, either not function at all, or function at a significantly reduced level of power. With these 3 failsafes in place, the Nephilim felt confident in the security of their greatest weapons, and proceeded to conquer and murder their way across the cosmos. Along the way, a few were destroyed or lost, but thanks to the safeguards, never used against the Nephilim. Until long after the death of the Nephilim as a species, when War and Death have to deal with the leftovers in the novel.
While generalities are given regarding the Grand Abomination's level of power throughout the book, during the Abomination Vault novel, only 3 Grand Abominations are actually encountered, though each lives up to the world and army-killing hype. We're going to go over each of them here. They are Mortis, Black Mercy, and Earthreaver. First up is Mortis. Mortis was a small buckler-sized shield designed with a gauntlet pre-attached to it. The gauntlet was primarily bone, though chainmail mesh was used in the joints. The buckler portion itself was a comparatively large, elongated face with one massive eye dominating most of the shield. Its fanged mouth opened in a silent scream or howl, the whole thing ringed with short horns. At full power and awakened with Ruffian blood, it was a terrible defensive weapon. In addition to providing potent mystical protection, any attack directed at Mortis's wielder was met with a burst of profane and powerful energy, but not directed at the attacker. Instead, when its wielder was attacked, Mortis plucked the identity of a family member, friend, or loved one from the attacker's mind, and sent that burst of energy off through the cosmos to find that person and kill them. And Mortis's attacks were fast, able to traverse whole worlds in heartbeats. Imagine 2 or 3 strikes on someone with this shield, and moments later 2 or 3 of your favorite people were dead where they'd stood. When Death finds it in the book, the thing is mostly dead, but even then it could direct comparatively weak retaliatory blasts at the wielder's immediate attackers, and even absorb the otherwise lethal shots from Black Mercy without killing the wielder. You'll understand why that's impressive here in a minute.
Next we have Earthreaver, the most visually horrifying but arguably least powerful of the 3 Grand Abominations we see in the book. The Earthreaver is a 2-part system. The first is a rifle, formed primarily of bone, with fingers and hands acting as the weapon's grips. In fact, the pistol grip's fingers intertwined with the wielder's for added stability. Ew. But rather than the barrel ending in an open muzzle for a projectile, it instead ends in an obsidian disc, polished to mirrored perfection. The rifle acts as Earthreaver's aiming device and little more. The butt of the rifle is attached by several feet of braided hair, like a rope, to the primary body of the Earthreaver. 4 stories tall, the Earthreaver is genuinely the kind of nightmare construction you'd expect to see acting as some sort of siege engine for the armies of hell. Walking on 4 massive crab-like legs formed of femurs and other long bones linked and woven together, the massive monstrosity is composed primarily of 9 separate segmented tentacle-like appendages formed from the rotting flesh of handless arms, connected wrist to shoulder, end over end. These tentacles end in shrunken, lipless mouths with black, rotting gums and jagged, angry teeth, all of which writhe surrounding a massive obsidian mirror identical in design to that found on the muzzle of the rifle. At full power, the thing moves, albeit slowly, but when ready to be used, the tentacles burrow into the ground, the gross mouths literally chewing into the earth beneath them, and as the wielder aims the rifle, the giant mirror atop the Earthreaver's main body tracks with it. When a target is chosen, a brief ripple in the earth can be seen before all of the tectonic and magma flow in the region is redirected to erupt at the target location, i.e., it makes an active volcano on command that erupts almost immediately into existence, and since the Earthreaver rewrites the geological makeup of the area, that's a real volcano. It will stay there. When considering the massive destruction that can cause, one might wonder, why are they calling this the least powerful weapon? The reason is actually pretty simple. Earthreaver can only rewrite an area once. Now, while we don't know what the actual effect radius is on this thing, once it's been fired, it has to pick up and walk to a new area outside of the previous area of effect in order to be used again. Though we imagine the legs and tentacles could do a fair amount of damage on their own on the way out. Of the 3 abominations encountered in the book, Earthreaver was the only one thought destroyed. Massive power, yes, but limited usage. We never see what the Earthreaver is like when inactive, though it seems likely that it simply wouldn't function without blood.
Lastly, and most deadly in and of itself, is Black Mercy. Black Mercy is a particularly bulky revolver. It has 3 barrels and 3 cylinders where bullets would normally sit. A visually complex array of cylinders rotate, revolve, and click in the center of the weapon, constantly feeding Black Mercy endless ammunition pulled in through dimensional portals. Cradled between the 3 barrels is a single eye, which somehow mystically enhances the wielder's aim. Because reasons. Also, it fires teeth. When lacking blood, Black Mercy is basically an exceptionally powerful pistol. A shot from Black Mercy, any shot, is fatal. If it hits you between the eyes, dead, like normal. But if it scratches your arm in passing, still dead. And that's when it's asleep. When awakened with Ruffian blood, Black Mercy still kills with a single shot, like normal, quote-unquote. But it also grows in power with each kill. The radius is never specified, but once awakened, Within a certain distance of Black Mercy, not only does any wound from the revolver kill its target, any wound to any enemy is fatal. Shoot a warrior and he's dead. Now that warrior falls into an ally, the impact causes the ally to cut his lip on his helmet. Now that ally is dead too. And so on and so on. And with each kill, the radius expands. Black Mercy has been described as a weapon that can single-handedly end armies, referred to by one character in the book as a handheld massacre. Now you see why a weakened Mortis tanking those shots is so impressive. That's all of the Grand Abominations we know about, but just take a moment to consider 3 warriors, even average warriors, equipped with Mortis, Earthreaver, and Black Mercy, taking on an army of foes. Open up with Earthreaver to soften up a defensive position or break up a troublesome battalion. Even if enemies survive the initial eruption from Earthreaver's volcano, they'd still be wounded, burns, cuts, or bruises from debris, etc. Wade in with Black Mercy, and those minor wounds become fatal. While at the front of the group, Mortis deflects incoming attacks, protecting the wielder and the other 2, while murdering the very people the army is trying to protect in the process. Now realize that the Nephilim had dozens of weapons just like these. Just imagine someone like Strife wielding Black Mercy, the carnage that alone could cause. It's little wonder, then, that the Nephilim stomped creation into submission for eons at a time.
And that's basically the story of the Grand Abominations. Key plot point of the Abomination Vault novel, and some of the most deadly fantasy weapons we've ever encountered. We hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave us a like. And if you have ideas for videos you'd like to see us do in the future, do like Dustin Archer, Javier Zaragoza, Jazzy Blagojevic, and David Fitzcharles, and let us know in the comments down below. If you'd like to see more videos from us in the future, be they lore or Let's Play, go ahead and hit that subscribe button.
In the meantime, this has been True Masters and Morons, signing off. Thanks for watching this video. If you want to see more like it, hit this subscribe orb.
To see our last Let's Play, click or tap the link on the right.
For our last lore video, go to the link on the left.
And for a video chosen by the gods of YouTube from our channel, hit that link on top.
Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.